You're listening to The Phillip Jordan Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Thursday edition of The Phillip Jordan Show. I'm your host, Phillip Jordan, for Last Word on College Football at 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan Woods Football. Got a jam-packed show for you guys today. We'll have a 46-minute conversation. That's right, long conversation with a good friend, colleague, Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football, where he covers Kentucky. So we kind of do a wrap-up on the Kentucky spring practice. They didn't have a spring game. Also get Kevin's thoughts on a couple news items in college football. Hugh Freeze wanting a different type of spring game. Kevin will talk about that. And the potential rule changes coming down the way for college football as well. And I'll answer the question that you answered on the Phillip Jordan Sports Facebook page. Who has the best atmosphere in college football or in sports in general as well as also. But before we do all that, before we get to Kevin, before we get to that, we're going to play a couple of things here and then my conversation with Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. And if you just leave 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater. You can also check out the show over on my YouTube channel, the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell for all notifications, and please leave a comment on a video, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. You can follow me on social media at pjordanscc, or you can email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. Let me tell you about my friend Brandon Eiserman's new podcast, Talking Noles. Brandon's keeping the Talking podcast alive. Twice a week, Brandon discusses the latest news in Florida State athletics and interviews people involved with the program. Check out Talking Noles on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Phillip Jordan Show. Everybody joining me today on the show is my Last Word on College Football colleague. You guys see him on screen. You saw his name on the audio podcast, so you know we're about to have some fun. I'm joined by Kevin McGuffey, covers the Kentucky Wildcats for us over at Last Word on College Football. Kevin, how you doing? I appreciate you coming on the show. I know we're going to have some fun. We always have fun when we do this.
Yeah, no pressure now. No pressure. Got to have a good show. No, just kidding. Yeah, Phil, thank you, always, for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. It's always good to get on and, hey, it's April, but let's talk college football because we're just, spring practice. Some people, spring practice has already wrapped up and others are wrapping up this weekend. So we'll, see where we go the next however long we're going to talk. So.
I know we've done this before. We've gone 45 minutes. We've gone 30 minutes. We can kind of go lengthy and we can kind of go off tangents and other fun stuff as well. But, with this show, and I've kind of adopted, I don't know if you watch The Late Kick with Josh Pate, but I've kind of adopted his philosophy. There is no off season. That is a dirty cuss word that we do not really promote here on the Phillip Jordan Show. So I've kind of got in that because really, man, this sport is all of football. There's no off season. This is a sport you can talk about every week, every day. Always something going on. So that's kind of my rule now. No, there's no off season. There's no off season.
Absolutely. Because the managers at Last Word, they kind of try to pound that into our brains that there's no, just because it's not football, they're not playing games, there's still stuff going on because you got spring practice and then you have recruiting and then you have the first portal season and then you're gonna have the second portal season, so it really is it's something you can do 52 weeks out of the year. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what we do here. Do it twice a week here. So everybody, please subscribe, rate, and review. Kentucky. So I was talking to you about this off the air, about Kentucky. Now, last year they had a spring game or semblance of one. Yep. This feels like, and I'm not counting 2020, the COVID year. Obviously, there wasn't spring game that year. But, Kevin, this seems like this has happened. There's always like renovations going on over at Kroger Field or something's going on where Kentucky cannot have a spring game. Why does Stoops keep doing this?
Your guess is as good as mine. As you said, 2020, they didn't have a game because of COVID. 2021, they technically didn't have a spring game because of COVID, although we found out later that they had some of the big boosters and they had like a little controlled scrimmage, for the high rollers, so to speak, there at there in Lexington or here in Lexington. And then last year we were kind of back to normal with the spring game. And then this year, no game officially because they were installing, as you said, they're installing a new turf at Kroger Field. And to me, the timing, no one's just really said, but to me, the timing seemed kind of odd. Is like you could start it after, start it this week. I don't know why they chose this time to do it, but they did not have a spring game. Kentucky basically wrapped up spring practice this past Saturday. The week before, on April 1st, they had a basically like kind of a fan day that they held it outside. It's kind of 11-11 on 11 scrimmage, offense versus the defense. And I don't know what it's, you guys I know have storms all the time down here, but for whatever reason, Lexington in this area has become like, I don't know, Chicago South. I mean, I work at a TV station here in Lexington, and they were saying that we've had like 12 wind advisories or high wind warnings since December. And, that's something we used to never have. And so they had the scrimmage on Saturday, and there's like 20, 30 mile an hour wind. And so, and they did it outside. They didn't do it inside the Nutter Center. They did it outside, like on their outside practice field. And probably to no one's surprise, the defense kind of dominated the day because it was just really hard to throw the ball in that wind. So, like I said, back to your original question, I don't know why they didn't just have a game and like say, okay, we're going to start today by putting in the new turf. Now, there may have been a comment somewhere that I could have missed, but I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, but I really don't. So it just seemed strange to me. But like I said, they had a fan day and they had a huge turnout because, I mean, everyone is excited about this program. You think about it, been to 6 straight bowl games, had won 4 straight before the game against Iowa that I refuse to talk about ever. Worst bowl game, worst setup to a bowl game ever. No one wanted to see that game, but it happened, and Kentucky lost. But now start a new streak, keep the bowl streak going, and start a new win streak this year. That's a good way to start for 2023.
Yeah, this past season was out there, but Kentucky does great. They're great for a basketball school, as John Calipari reminded us last year.
Oh God, don't get me started. That was so. I think I've talked about this before, but it was he shouldn't have said it, and Stoops shouldn't have said what he said, and UK's athletic director Mitch Barnhart should have jumped in and nipped, use a Barney Fife, nipped it in the bud before this thing blew up like it did. And of course, in Kentucky didn't have as good a football season as they've had the last few years, and the basketball season, I think meh would be a good way to describe the season this year. And honestly, a lot of, I think, the Big Blue Nation's thoughts towards the basketball program right now. But that's a story for another time. But it was something that should have never happened, and it should have been squashed before it ever got to the point that it did. But that's bygones. Can't do anything about now. Water under the bridge, as my grandparents used to always say. So,
well, when that happened is when last summer when I was trying to do the show every day. Right. So, and that day I was going into it like, I don't really have a big story to talk about. And then all of a sudden come across my phone, what Calipari said. I was like, oh, thank you. You just gave me content that I could talk about for 15 to 20 minutes. So,
right.
as a mutual not mutual, but neutral observer, I was happy that he did it just because it gave me something to discuss.
Right.
But well, coming out of spring with Kentucky for you and what you've been hearing and what's out there, what's been the big storylines or news items coming out of spring practice?
Well, probably the biggest. There's probably several. Probably the biggest is the return of Liam Coen back to Kentucky. Of course, 2 years ago, he was the offensive coordinator here. Kentucky averaged like 33 points a game. Obviously, made Will Levis into what we think is going to be a potential first-round draft pick. We'll probably get into that later. Obviously, last season, Coen left, went back to be reunited with Sean McVay with the Rams, be their offensive coordinator. That didn't work out very well. Things didn't work out very well here at Kentucky with Rich Scangarello, another guy from the NFL who was brought in, and he was let go at the end of the season. So Cohen's back. Devin Leary, obviously that's the biggest on the field. Devin Leary, the former North Carolina State quarterback, transferred to Kentucky this year, and the biggest question was going to be how was his health, because he tore a pectoral muscle last year, missed about half the season. Of course, you go back to 2021, he had just an incredible season, threw for over like 3,500 yards, 35 touchdowns with only 5 interceptions, and I think was a finalist for the Johnny Unitas Award. Then, of course, then you go back to the year before that, he missed half the season because he had a broken leg. So obviously there's a little concern, with injury, but like when practice started, he was kind of, to use a baseball term, he was on a pitch count. They kind of took it easy with him, but from everything we've seen and heard, he, got through the spring with flying colors. One of the biggest things that he had to adjust to was honestly taking snaps under center, because with Cohen's offense, you're actually under center most of the time. Whereas if you go back and watch those games of North Carolina State, he was in the shotgun the majority of the time. So he had to, that was an adjustment period, getting used to that. And like I said, everybody, by all accounts, he had a really good spring, and the team, everyone's excited to see what he can do with this offense and with the receivers that they have. Because I will put Kentucky's receivers up against just about anybody in the SEC, with Dane Key, Barrion Brown, who was a freshman All-American last year, and Tavion Robinson, who's returning this year, taking advantage of the extra year, decided to come back. Those three guys are going to be, three great weapons. And then, honestly, Kentucky's top 5 pass catchers returned from last year. And then, like I said, then also they have some tight ends who I think can be really, really good. Those tight ends were missing from the spring. They were all injured, basically. Brendan Bates, and the other names are escaping me right now, but they had basically 2 tight ends the entire spring to work with. So they were having some offensive linemen. I think Tanner Bowles, especially, he's a transfer from Alabama. He actually ran some at tight end during the spring just so they'd have enough people to go through the offense. But as far as everyone in the Big Blue Nation, to use the cliche, to use the proper terminology, everyone's really excited about the offense heading into seeing what they can do in 2023. But it's also going to depend on the offensive line, because if you watch Kentucky for any stretch last year, Levis, part of the issue why Levis didn't have as good a year is because he spent half the games running for his life. So, and Kentucky has tried to upgrade through the portal. As I said, I mentioned Tanner Bowles. He's from Kentucky originally, down southwestern Kentucky, played at Alabama, transferred here, and they picked up Marquez Cox from Northern Illinois, who was one of the highest rated tackles in the Mid-American Conference. He's going to plug right in at one of those tackle positions, and they already feel like they're stronger than they were in 2022. That being said, they did struggle some against the defensive line in that spring game. So kind of a long-winded answer, but Leary, Coen, the wide receivers, everyone is really excited to see what this offense can do. And if they can get back to that averaging 33, 30-plus points a game, which, of course, with the Mark Stoops club, you don't usually see that. He'd be happy winning a 13-10 game as much as he would, 49-42 or something like that.
Yeah, if he still had hair, he'd pull his hair out in those kind of games. It was 49-42. I really believe that. Oh, you talk about the offensive line. They gave up 46 sacks last year, and then that was something with Kentucky, the Big Blue Wall. That was a staple. That was a guarantee that this team not only protect the quarterback but also running the ball. They only averaged 3.3 yards per carry last season, which I know the first 4 games Chris Rodriguez not being there hurt as well.
Right.
But running back, they've got a lot to replace there. I mean, Chris Rodriguez is a big name to replace him. What he meant for that program. Where are they at when it comes to running back? Who's going to be the next guy up?
Yeah, I just said Rodriguez. Finished third all-time leading rusher at Kentucky behind Benny Snell and Sonny Collins. And basically the guy who's going to be the starter is Ray Davis, who formerly played at Vanderbilt last year and ran for like 130 yards and a touchdown when Vandy beat Kentucky in another one of those games we don't want to talk about when they ended that 25 game SEC losing streak when they beat Kentucky and Lexington last year. So he's going to be your guy starting off. He was when the offense was out there this past Saturday or a week ago Saturday. Leary was the quarterback, Davis was your running back, and then you had Kaya Sharon and Juton McClain, or Juton McClain will be probably the primary backup starting the season, because not only did they lose Chris Rodriguez, but they also lost Cavassier Smoke, who, in his time at Kentucky ran for over 1,500 yards. He transferred. He's at Colorado now with hanging out with Dion. So out there, but Ray Davis is going to be the guy. I think he's proven what he can do. Obviously, ran for 1,000 yards, last year at Vanderbilt, and they're I use the word excitement, but they're excited to see what he can do, in this offense, because like I said, we're all expecting big, another 1,000-yard rusher, hopefully. But as you said, the offensive line is still a bit of a work in progress, but I do think it's going to be better. It's going to be better than it was last year. I mean, you'd hate to say it can't be worse, but
and you talk. And I remember the first 4 games where Chris Rodriguez came back, they couldn't run the ball at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had no semblance of running game before he came back. But
right, and you think about it, and other than Florida, they weren't playing that great a competition either. It was if you look at the schedule, they had a couple of MAC games, and let's see. Let me pop this up real quick. First game, Miami of Ohio, then they played Florida, then they played Youngstown State, and then they played Northern Illinois, which was a game that they could easily have lost. But as you said, there was not a whole lot to the run game, and there wasn't as much to the pass game either. It was honestly the defense. They kind of had to lean on the defense there to win. Obviously, the game at Florida, Levis had a great game. Dane Key had a great game there as wide receiver. But, yeah, they kind of leaned on the defense there earlier in the season.
And looking at the defense, the defense was great last season. I mean, they played a pretty solid game against Georgia, and everybody kind of forgets how high rated Georgia's offense really was. I mean, we just think about Georgia running the ball defense. They're not this great offense, but they're right there with Tennessee where they were at last season. But anyways, 11th in the nation last year, 3rd in the SEC in scoring defense, only giving up 19 points per game. And when your offense is only scoring 20 points per game, that was pretty huge. I mean, it was very, very close games a lot because of that. But when your defense can do that, you're able to pull out some wins. And then pass defense, they were 7th overall, giving up 171 yards per game. Defense coordinator Brad White, tremendous job. They got a lot of good guys coming back. Now, I know in the secondary, they've got some guys to replace in Valentine and Smith, but this defense, what's the storylines there? We talked all about the offense. What's the lines on the defense?
Yeah, you make a very good point. You just go back real quick. Kentucky held Georgia to 16 points, won 16-6, and you think about, they scored 42 against Ohio State, and I think they probably scored 2 more times against TCU while you and I have been talking. So it was, it was like 63 to whatever it was. Yeah, I don't think Brad White gets enough credit for what a job he's done here at Kentucky. Now, I know LSU last year tried really hard to get him to leave, to go down there to be their defensive coordinator. He decided to stay. Honestly, I think he's a guy, somebody that probably pretty well, John Summerall. I see in within a couple years, he'll be, I think, a coach somewhere, Sun Belt, Conference USA. And I'm not saying he's going to have the success that Summerall's had so far, but I think he's going to be a really, really good head coach. But I don't think he gets enough. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he's done at Kentucky. And we talk about the defense. I think the defense. I think they have potential again to be a top five group. They had one of their starters on the defensive line, Justin Rogers, transferred to Auburn, and depending on what stories you read, he tried to recruit half the defense to go with him to Auburn. Kind of left a bad taste in some people's mouths up here, but a name that everyone needs to know is Deion Walker. He played a lot. He ended up splitting time with Rogers last year. I'm just looking at the most recent post I did for Last Word was, previewing the defensive line. And like I said, Walker, he was all SEC freshman, and had 40 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And he was the defensive lineman of the week for his play against Louisville. He's going to be a guy I don't have his weight and height in front of me, but he's, a big guy in the middle, plugging up those runs, plugging up that defense or the offensive line. And then another guy, Octavius Oxendine, who's from North Hardin. He went into 22. He had a really good 2021 before he got injured. Then the coaching staff wanted him to lose some weight and try to gain some quickness. And it didn't really work out like they were hoping. And then he only played in a few games in 2022. Now they've had him bulk back up. So he's, it's a guy that they're really, the coaching staff is really high on. He's going to be probably, he's going to be the backup to Walker. And then another name that I want to throw out there is Keyshawn Silver. He's another guy, Kentucky was in the top 20, I think, in the transfer portal rankings. He's a guy who's from North Carolina, didn't play a whole lot under Mac Brown there at Carolina, and decided to look elsewhere for playing time. And he ended up here at Kentucky, and he's been turning a lot of heads and getting a lot of talk. There's been a lot of chatter about him that he's going to be, pushing for some serious playing time this year. So you think about that, but then to me, I think one of the best groups is the linebackers. You think about what Kentucky lost from last year with you had Jordan Wright, DeAndre Square, and Jaquez Jones as your linebackers last year. All three of those guys are gone, and Kentucky has 3 guys that they're going to plug in who can be, potentially just as good, and that's led by Trevin Wallace, J.J. Weaver, and De'Aaron Jackson. Those are some guys that, the White thinks, and, of course, Mike Stoops is the, one of the linebackers coaches there at Kentucky. Those are some guys they think can really do some big things in 2023. And then I guess since we're going through the defense, we'll just if there is a question mark, it is probably cornerback, because as you mentioned, Carrington Valentine is gone. I think he gets. I think there's a good chance he gets drafted late in the late, a third day pick. Then Audrey Kedron Smith is gone. So right now you're left with a couple of transfers: J.Q. Hardaway and Jansen Dunn, and then Andrew Phillips, a guy who's done some pretty good things here at Kentucky. So the corner, it would not surprise me, honestly, to see them go after a cornerback in the second transfer portal window. Maybe somebody who can come in and start from day one once they get in and learn the system. But then the safeties are in really good shape. One name to remember is Zion Childress. He played some last year. He came from Texas State. He's one of the guys who was the talk of spring practice. They think he's really going to be do some great things this year. Than just throwing out some other names. You got Jalen Geiger. I talked about Andrew Phillips. He can play safety or corner. And Alex Safari. They did lose Vito Tisdale out of that group. He was hurt last year, missed the season with a torn ACL, and was coming back and thought was going to do some good things. And then he got kicked off the team for basically, we'll just say, disciplinary reasons. And they just, UK just said, he's not on the team anymore, and we're not going to make any more comment. So that was that. So as excited as everyone is about the offense, I think the defense can be really, really strong. Again, they just get that cornerback situation nailed down, and they're strong up front. The linebackers, I think, are really good. A question with the linebackers is depth behind the three starters, but I think the secondary, has potential to, I use that word a lot, potential, but I think the potential, is really there for another big season for the Wildcats.
Another thing, like if you have inexperience or not as good at corner or in the secondary as you want to, when you've got guys like they've got on the defensive front and at linebacker that can get pressure on the quarterback, can cause that quarterback to hurry up his throw, that puts the defensive backs in a very good situation too, as well, as they're learning or getting experience, whatever you want to call it. That helps out. So having that front seven that looks like it's going to be a stellar group once again for Kentucky, if they have some issues at the back end, that can cover it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I talked about Walker before. He's a guy, in the spring scrimmage, if you were counting sacks, he would have had 2 during that game. So, yeah, you think about Walker, Oxendine, Trevon Ripka is another guy that I didn't mention. He's probably your third starter on the defensive line. And then with Silver, like I said, they're really high on Silver. I would not be surprised to see him maybe not be a starter from day one, but I definitely get a lot of playing time. So, but as you said, you get that pass rush, and as you said, a good pass rush is the secondary. As you just said, the secondary's best friend. If you got just, flip the script what we were talking about earlier, you think about Levis, last year running for his life, in almost every game. And so, he hurries, makes bad passes, bad decisions. And that's kind of what Kentucky's hoping for this year with that defense, with, the guys up front, get in there, cause some havoc, and get some turnovers. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So this team is going to be fun when we get to the season with this team. I'm really looking forward to Devin Leary staying healthy. You brought that up.
Right.
Some other stuff I want to talk to you about, some more overall college football stuff. And, of course, the team I cover is Auburn, and they had their spring game on Saturday, which Hugh Freeze made news. He threw out the idea of how he would do the spring. Instead of playing yourself, play other teams, scrimmage, still do the same thing. Quarterbacks don't get hit. You still operate it like you would a spring game, but play like somebody in state, like they would play a Troy or UAB or South Alabama. When you saw that, where would you be on that? Would you be in favor of that?
Yeah, I would definitely be for it. I don't know what, I read online kind of reaction. I don't know what the reaction would be to teams, especially if Auburn was to play UAB and basically UAB, beat them, dominated, then that's not. You always talk about just real quick with college basketball. You always have these secret scrimmages you always hear about, like, well, such and such played such and such at this place, and we heard that North Carolina played Texas and Texas beat them or something. I think it's cool now. Like for Kentucky, I don't know. They already play. Like they're playing Eastern Kentucky this year in football. I don't know who, like at Kentucky, I don't know who they would play. I mean, I guess they could try to do like Western or maybe even like Georgetown College, which is a smaller college here, but it's always had a really good football program. I mean, I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know. I don't know if Coach Freeze have a whole lot of, and I could be wrong. I don't know if there'd be a whole lot of people that would go for that or not, but that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, for Kentucky and Louisville, where would that put them? And obviously you got Western Kentucky, but then you got here in Alabama, you got Auburn and Alabama, here in the SEC, but then you've got South Alabama and Troy in the Sun Belt. You've got UAB, who they're going to be moving to the American. And then you also got Jacksonville State that's now coming up that's going to be playing at the FBS level. So there's plenty of smaller schools, but still at the FBS level. I know Kentucky, outside of Louisville, Kentucky, again, is just Western Kentucky. So that's one thing with you. I was really intrigued, like what would be some keys
and now that I think about it, now you what you said triggered something in my brain. Was that Kentucky, like my alma mater, I went to Morehead State University. They used to be in the OVC in football, and they've dropped down to they're in the Pioneer League now with San Diego and Butler. Somebody like that. Maybe Morehead would be an interesting game. Cumberland, University of the Cumberlands, Campbellsville University. There's a lot of, when you think about it, like there's a lot of really like the NAIA schools that play football here. Now see, that like that would be kind of fun. Travel, go up to more or have Morehead come down here and play like a controlled scrimmage. Something like that I think would be fun. I just don't know, and like I said, I could be wrong. I don't know how much, how much interest there would be for somebody to do that, but it's definitely, I don't think it's to use the phrase, I don't hate the idea. I just don't know, like with Kentucky's standpoint, I don't know. Like I said, some of those schools maybe you could try to do something with, but I doubt that they would play Western because, they don't really want to play them on a regular basis anyway. They played them a few years ago. I think they did like a 2-year series and they split it, but that was when Stoops just first got here to Kentucky and they were still rebuilding, and still trying to bring themselves up from the unfortunate end of the Joker Phillips era. So, but Western Kentucky would be a heck of a test for Kentucky's defense because you think about it, they light the ball up, or light the scoreboard up. I don't know if you follow them at all. 40, 50 points a game. That would be a fun test, like against the Kentucky defense, like a Western Kentucky. But
they played Auburn. Auburn played them last season, and Western Kentucky they like to throw the ball around. That's Bailey Zappi. Remember everybody who broke all those records when he was there the year before. So and they got a good quarterback now. I'm drawing a blank on his name at the moment, but they've got a pretty solid quarterback too. That was kind of some people thought he was going to leave, go into the portal and leave. He actually come back. So they do pretty good over there for quarterbacks at Western Kentucky.
Yes. Give me just a second. I'll get him. Austin Reed.
That's it. I knew the first name was Austin, but I was blanking on the last name.
Yeah. Austin Reed threw for 4,700 yards, 40 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions last year. Yeah, right. Because remember, because I think because full interest or disclosure, we all pick bowl games to cover for last word. I think I did the whichever game Western Kentucky played in, and if you remember, I remember now because he put himself in the transfer portal, and then like a week later came back and then played in the bowl game, and and then had I think it was a pretty incredible stats in that bowl game that
I think they beat South Alabama. I think that's who they played.
Yep. Beat South Alabama 44-23. Yep, you're exactly right. So yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't know if Kentucky want to play them or not.
Because South Alabama was really good last year too.
They were really good.
I mean, they get blown out in a bowl game. They lost by they were close to being undefeated in the regular season. They lose 10-6 to Troy, and then they lost a very close game to UCLA. So a game where I think they lost by one. Lost by 1 point.
Yeah, and I think they honestly should have won. Really easily could have won that game. So yeah, lost to USC 32-31, lost to Troy 10-6, and then lost to Western in the New Orleans Bowl. Yeah, I remember that game. I think they probably should have beat. They probably should have beat UCLA that night, but.
And a couple of weeks ago, I had Craig Stevenson from AL.com. He covers them. They pretty much got most of their team back from last season. I mean, I know I'm close to Troy, and all my Troy brethren, you can mute the podcast right now, but they're not going to like me saying this. But I think South Alabama should be the favorite to win the Sun Belt next year because they pretty much got everybody coming back, and Troy's got some people to replace. But yeah, I guess I should have put a disclaimer up on the screen. I said, okay, you can now unmute the show if you're a Troy fan. But I love Troy. I love Troy. I mean, they're I have joked they're the team of the podcast. I love talking about the Troy Trojans because I live so close to them. But that's just kind of, truth hurts sometimes, Kevin.
And as we said, we had the Kentucky, got the Kentucky connection there with with Coach Summerall. So. You wonder, if he has a couple more years like that, you'll probably see him move, maybe move on somewhere. You never know. So,
I think Auburn was the only team in the state that had a losing record last season.
Yeah, but that's all right. They're going to be better this year, I think. So.
Can't get any worse. Anyways, we did this. I knew we'd go off on a tangent. Somehow we turned this into South Alabama and Troy and all that stuff.
Okay. Like I said, I'll talk about anybody. So just about. So maybe not the Pac-12. No, I'm just kidding.
Everybody knows I will. If I haven't insulted your team, just give it time. I'll get there eventually. Even the team I cover, I'll throw shade at. So it's just I don't discriminate against anybody. So, one last thing I want to get your thoughts on, and it seems like we're headed in this direction. And look, I know we have our internal last world college football discussions. I think there's a lot of split. A lot of people don't like college football being messed with, but I'm for the potential clock changes about the clock not stopping the reset on first downs. Right. I have not liked that. I felt like that should have been gone a long time ago, but. How do you feel about that and some of the potential rule changes that are coming with college football?
As far as the clock, I'm all for it. I thought it was, because what is like the last 5 minutes of the half or something, or the last 5 minutes of the game, it's going to stop.
Last 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Maybe 5 would be better. But I think, college football games, as much as we love college football, and I'll sit and watch about any game, but they're too – and they're doing the same thing with baseball. I think they're going a little overboard with the, the pitch clock and the, the batter, you can't get out of the box. And, I think it will be better. I can't take credit for this one, but, I mentioned earlier, I work, my day job, I work at a TV station here in Lexington, and it's the NBC station. Of course, NBC now is going to be part of the Big Ten, the Big Ten TV package, especially those primetime games. And somebody made the comment, it's like, I can't wait until, that Northwestern Maryland game goes into a third overtime and, delays the start of Saturday Night Live by like an hour, and it's not even gone into overtime. It's just, I think the games have gotten too long, and the bowl games are, especially the bowl games. Some of those were like 4.5 hours. I have no problem with them keeping the clock running after first downs, after incomplete passes. I'm 100% on board with it. I I think it's, I think it'll be good. I think it'll help. I mean, the game is great as it is, but I think any way you can maybe speed it up just a little bit, I think is a good thing. And just randomly, this is one of those things that annoys the crap out of me. Like, I don't understand how ESPN can only allot 2 hours for a basketball game. It's like, 12 to, make it 2:15, like start a game at 12, the next game at 2:15 at 4:30, because, Kentucky, and, now that Auburn, under Bruce Pearl has been doing such, very well, they get those late night games sometimes, and, and you miss, because like on, Wildcat Twitter, we're like, okay, it's 8 minutes to go when it's 8:47, so how much of the game are we going to miss? And, and of course they're always trying to get you to go to the ESPN Plus and all that stuff. But to your original point, I think I have no problem with it. I'm all for it. So
now I will say this: they like to dress it as player safety, which I do think that's part of it, because the more games they're going to start playing with the college football playoff. Look, college football, I mean, you get games where these players are out there for 80, 90 plays. I mean, you don't see that in the NFL. Their clock rules are different, and the game kind of moves. But we all know this is TV oriented with these networks putting all this money, because they want to lay out their TV schedule for that day. A game kicks off at 2:30 Central Time. Y'all always know I do Central Time because I'm in Alabama. They would probably, 2:30, then 6 o'clock or something like that. Or a game kicks off at 11, 2 o'clock, or, such and such. So, I think that's the big thing with this. They're dressing it up as player safety, and I believe that's part of it. But I think the biggest reason is for on the TV side of things.
Oh, I think so. I mean, let's face it, TV. I think TV pretty much runs things right now. As you said, like with the Big Ten, they're going to have a game at noon. They're going to have a game at 3:30, and then they're going to have the 7:30 game on NBC every night, almost every Saturday. And then you have the poor unfortunate Pac-12 who's, still trying to find
Pac-12 after dark on the CW. That's where
we're
going.
on the CW. Now, interesting. Now, Brett McMurphy tweeted this like about a month ago. Now, the station I work for is owned by Scripps Corporation. And that because they're trying to get into like doing they're trying to get into sports, like the Bally Sports, all those South, channels that are going under. They were thinking about, can we scoop in and do some of this stuff? But anyway, Brett McMurphy had tweeted out one day that the Pac-12 was in talk with Scripps about doing their, about trying to get some of the football package. And then to use your, the joke was, okay, Pac-12 football followed by 4 episodes of Blue Bloods, on Ion television or whatever. So, I don't think anything's going to come with that. But, so basically the CW will have like the Live Golf Tour and Pac-12 football possibly. So I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't know. I don't know how you can. You have to get Tony Syracuse on here and let him, who's one of our managing big bosses at Last Word, and as former UCLA guy, knows all about the Pac-12. He now covers Wake Forest, but I'm sure he could probably go on for about 3 hours about the problems with the Pac-12 and TV and everything else. But yeah, it's all about TV and all about the old song, all about the Benjamins. So.
Oh yeah, and all the money that these networks are going to be putting out for all this stuff. That's what it's about. Right. Kevin, we have gone past 40 minutes. I kind of wondered if we would. It's been good. You broke down the Kentucky roster, everything going on with it. Great. Nobody needs to buy a preseason magazine. Just come listen to the pod. You know the roster. You know who's on the team.
Yeah, you got Phil Steele and you got me. Yeah, I was kidding.
There you go. And then we even had some South Alabama talk. We just randomly popped into the episode. It's been good having you on the show as always. But the listeners and viewers want to follow you online. Where can they find you and all the work you're doing?
It's at Kevin McGuffey. Very, had a lot of thought going into that. Now, I've told you the story before that I tried like 8 different Twitter names when I first joined, which I think was like 2011 or 2012, and they were all taken. So I was like, okay, let's see if somebody has my actual name. So then I was going to, if that didn't work, I was going to do like the Kevin McGuffey, try to make myself seem important, much more important than I really am. But yes, at Kevin McGuffey on Twitter, and of course at Last Word on CFB for for our coverage. Like I said, Phillip does a great job covering Auburn, and then we have, I think, about 20, somewhere between 20, 25 schools maybe that are getting covered right now, which is pretty cool. And but yeah, at Kevin McGuffey on Twitter is probably the best way to find me. So you can read all about that. Like I said, right now, the last thing I did, I've been going through the Kentucky football team, previewing position by position. So I just finished the defensive line. This week will be we'll go through the linebackers, and the next week I'll do the secondary and special teams, and then by then it'll lead us right into the NFL draft. I said we didn't really talk about the draft. Like I said, I still think Levis is going to be a first round pick. There's a lot of people that don't seem to think that right now. I know he's meeting with, as we're talking, he's supposed to be meeting with the Tennessee Titans. That's the team. I think they have the 11th pick. That's a team that seems to be getting a lot of buzz now with Levis, that they're ready to move. Maybe after another year, they're ready to move on, and Levis could be their quarterback of the future. Still hearing a lot about Indianapolis, the Raiders. I've seen Minnesota. I think they have like the 23rd pick. I've seen several mock drafts that have him going to Minnesota, which would be kind of interesting. But we'll just see. I think he's still going to be a first round pick. I still think Young and Stroud are the first 2 picks. No, just not to cause controversy, but I'm going to say it. I don't get the hype. I'm sorry with Anthony Richardson, but that's just me. Everybody probably for the same reason people say that about Levis. I thought the guy had like one good game in 2 years, but he did incredible things at the combine and at their pro day. And so, all you need is, the right team and the right situation. And you could have, not saying another Tom Brady, but, you could have your quarterback for the next decade really easily. So like I said, for my Bengals, I'm a Bengals fan. I went through a lot of bad football, but it's kind of still getting used to the fact that the Bengals are actually good in football. So, and of course, obviously, a lot of that has to do with Joe Burrow. They got the right guy at the right time, and it's been, it's just been amazing to watch, the Bengals over the last 3 years.
Yeah, it has. It's a crapshoot with the quarterbacks in the draft. You just don't know. You just don't know how these guys are going to perform when they get to that level. But I know, Kevin, you will always perform well when you come on the show. So I appreciate it as always.
Wasn't sure you were going with that one, but okay.
That is a good note to close the show on. But Kevin, as always, I appreciate the time, and I look forward to doing this again sometime down the road.
Yes, sir, man. Anytime you enjoy spending time talking about football, and anytime you want to have me on, I'd be more than happy to do it. Thank you very much.
If you enjoy this podcast and live in the southeast area of Alabama, check out the Wiregrass High School Football Report, brought to you by DGO Strategies. During high school football season, I talk with local coaches and look at the biggest stories and games. The show will be returning soon, and you can check it out on Apple Podcasts, the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel, or 969thelegend.com. Now, back to the Phillip Jordan Show.
It is always fun when me and Kevin get together. We do it every couple months here. We just get together and we talk ball. A lot of Kentucky talk. We jump into other stuff too. You heard it there. South Alabama was in there. I'm sure I made some of my Troy brethren upset with me. But we jumped around, did some other stuff. Now, I said Tuesday this was going to go over an hour. We're going to kind of end it here pretty soon. We're going to go with the Facebook question I asked the audience. So, well, a few responses to that. But I said on Tuesday I was going to preview some spring games on that. And I got to thinking, see, Florida plays their spring game on Thursday night. And then we have a bunch of spring games on Saturday. And the XFL and USFL is playing Saturday too. So I figured this got close to an hour. So I am going a special edition of the Phillip Jordan Show, solo edition, will be coming your way Saturday. I will probably record it Friday sometime, but it will be coming your way Saturday morning. Well, kind of like a preview deal there. So that's what's going to go down there. A special edition of the Phillip Jordan Show coming your way this coming up Saturday morning, if the voice cooperates. Before we get out of here, I did last week go on to my Facebook page, and I just want to ask you guys a question, see your responses. Got a few on Facebook and one over on Twitter. What stadium or arena has the best atmosphere in sports? And on Facebook, I got Ken Maddox. He's always commenting on it. I always appreciate it. I've never been in it, but the Cowboys Stadium just seems so surreal to me. I imagine seeing that huge screen in the sky would make the game so much more enjoyable. You know, if I was in that one, I would probably be worried. I'd be focused more on that than actually watching the field. You know, I did that at Auburn at Jordan-Hare when they put in their new screen. I went to a game, I believe it was the year after they put it in. They played Ole Miss, and I caught myself a lot watching that screen and not actually what's going on the field. So I think it can also be distracting. Elena Thomas, Death Valley, the real one in Clemson, South Carolina. Oh, you're gonna get things stirred up with the LSU fans there. That's a pretty cool one. I like this. That would be one experience. Matthew Hewitt. Sorry if I mispronounced your name there. Neyland. You saw what Neyland was about against Alabama. So hey, that one's got an atmosphere for sure when Tennessee's good. And then over on Twitter, Brandon Eisman, no debate, #Knowles. He will be at that stadium Saturday. Up in there if I am or not. You guys will know on Tuesday's show if I made it there or not. So that is your responses to that. And I appreciate everybody doing it. So I'm going to get out of here. Now, normally this is when I say I'll talk to you guys next Tuesday, but since both shows went long, I'm going to put out a Saturday morning solo, just go over some stuff, preview some spring games, talk about the Florida spring game. So I'll be doing that on Saturday morning. But anyways, guys, I appreciate you checking out the show. Keep subscribing, audio or video, wherever you get it. I do appreciate it. Hope everybody has a great Thursday. I'll talk to you on Saturday. You guys know the drill. Let kindness be your compass.
Thanks for listening to The Phillip Jordan Show. Subscribe to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch the show over at the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel. Got a question or topic idea? Email the show at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Join us next time for more great football talk.